Well, welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us tonight. I'm Amy Waywell. I'm the Director of Membership here at the MFA, and it is my pleasure to welcome you for tonight's virtual lecture featuring three of the curators responsible for our latest exhibition, Framing Nature, Gardens and Imagination, which will be on view here at the MFA until June 28th. As always, I appreciate you joining us tonight and your ongoing member support. As a reminder, this program is coming to you virtually from the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston. Founded in 1870, the MFA stands on a site that has long served as a place of meeting and exchange among different Algonquin nations, including the Massachusetts. As a museum, we acknowledge the long histories of the land we occupy today and seek ways to make Indigenous narratives more prominent in our galleries and programming. Now, before we get started, I'd like to point out some functionality for Zoom that might help you enjoy tonight's lecture a little better. First, there is closed captioning available. If you need that, it's a button that says closed captioning right on the bottom of the Zoom screen. And if you have a question during tonight's programming, we're going to ask that you use the Q&A function right next to the closed caption button on the bottom of the screen to ask questions or share comments. Now, I'm pleased to introduce tonight's speakers. It's such a treat to have all three of you here tonight. First, Karen Haas is the Lane Curator of Photographs at the MFA, where she is responsible for a large collection of photographs by American modernists Charles Sheeler, Edward Weston, Ansel Adams, and Imogen Cunningham. The Lane collection numbers more than 6,000 prints and ranges across the entire history of Western photography. Her MFA activities include exhibitions such as Faces in the Crowd, Street Photography, Barbara Bosworth, The Meadow, Ansel Adams in Our Time, Unexpected Families, Make Believe, and Gordon Parks, Back to Fort Scott. Elizabeth Dospěl Williams is Penny Vinik Chair in the David and Roberta Logie Department of Fashion, Textiles, and Jewelry at the MFA. Her PhD, research, publications, and exhibitions focus on late antique, Byzantine, and early Islamic wearable arts. Before coming to the MFA, she was curator of the Byzantine collection at Dumbarton Oaks Research Library and Collection in Washington, D.C., where she curated special exhibitions including Rich in Blessings, Women, Wealth, and the Late Antique Household, and Woven Interiors furnishing early medieval Egypt. And lastly, Courtney Harris is Associate Curator of Decorative Arts and Sculpture, Art of Europe at the MFA. She received her MA from the Courtauld Institute of Art and her BA from Johns Hopkins University, and has a broad range of interests in the decorative arts. Recent projects include a monograph on early English pewter and exhibitions Georgia O'Keeffe and Henry Moore, and Tiny Treasures, The Magic of Miniatures. She has led gallery renovation projects at the MFA, including the French Salon Period Room reinstallation of French silver and galleries dedicated to Dutch and Flemish art. Thank you so much for joining us and for sharing sort of how you collaborated around this fantastic exhibition. I know we're all looking forward to spring weather, and what a treat to have this very springy garden exhibition on view today.
Thank you so much, Amy. It's really, really nice to be here. Tonight, we look forward to introducing you to our current exhibition in the Gunn Gallery. My name is Karen Haas, and it has been a real joy to work with such a brilliant group of curators and colleagues throughout the organization of this project. Joining me on this webinar, as Amy mentioned, are two of the three other curators who collaborated on the exhibition, Betsy Williams in Fashion, Textiles, and Jewelry, and Courtney Harris in Dec Arts and Sculpture in the Art of Europe. Not here with us tonight, but the fourth member of this wonderful team is Megan Melvin, Ruth and Carl Shapiro, Senior Curator of Prints and Drawings. Here on the screen, we're showing you in sort of a thumbnail version, kind of a shorthand, images representing the wide range of works in Framing Nature, I have to say, and if any of you were present at the opening over the weekend, you would know that we're really quick to say that even those of us like myself who've worked here for many, many years, I've never before had the opportunity to organize an exhibition from virtually every department and every one of the museum's collections. This has been a real learning experience for us, and all of us, I think, would agree that the excitement around this exhibition is contagious. Here, I think you can see everything from Pompeian frescoes to American paintings to photographs, decorative arts, really every material you can imagine. And that has been, I think, the great joy for me, someone who normally works on photographs, to get to work with so many different materials with so many different colleagues. Can I have the next slide? Just to give you a sense of some of the really amazing teamwork that went into organizing this project, and give you a sense of sort of the behind the scenes, a bit of behind the scenes. Here I'm showing you three images of some of the, I would say, probably hundreds of people who ended up being involved in this project. So just a small slice. On the left, you can see the Japanese prints being laid out on the table there, and some of our colleagues reviewing that material. Really an embarrassment of riches for any of you who know our Japanese collections. It was a very tough decision, narrowing those objects down to the few that we could include in the exhibition. In the center image, you can see literally the space that's right behind me now, the more study room. This is our study room for prints, drawings, and photographs, and a space that is on any given day is a place where scholars meet, where classes come, where we look at works on paper and bring them down from storage, and often show them without the glazing or the frames that normally you would experience an object in the galleries. And here we are working with our designers and our conservators and preparators, working out plans around the presentation of books, which are quite, as you can imagine, quite challenging, but also quite exciting because you're choosing the page openings, etc. And then on the right-hand side, an image of one of the tapestries in the exhibition, one of the works that's particular focus of Betsy's department, and one of the real joys to be able to see in advance of this project, some of these works that are normally stored, rolled up, and not on view, to have them hung and displayed and shared with outside scholars, looked at by our teen group, and experienced for many of us for the very first time. Can I have the next slide, please? Here you're seeing more of the installation itself in the galleries. And I just, again, to sort of make the point of how many people are involved and how complicated sometimes the simplest things can really be, and how fascinating for those of us who, joke that we work on those flat things that are normally just framed and hung on the wall, to see our colleagues in textiles, all the care and work that goes into preparing an object like the Elizabeth Talford Scott piece in the second gallery of the exhibition, here being prepared to hang on the wall, and all that goes into that. One of the photographs in the middle, I guess, an example of something that goes up rather quickly, but was equally exciting for me to see. And then on the far right, the wonderful works of local artist Andrew Raftery being hung on the wallpaper that he designed. So not only the plates being installed by the staff who designed the mounts, etc., but also the wallpaper that the artist himself designed. So gives you a sense of all the people who were involved and how that all rolls out when we're together in the galleries. And finally, I just to kind of walk you into the space and give you a sense of the entrance, the conversations with our designers about the design of the space. In a perfect world, we would have had a living wall of plants there. In this case, we have this wonderful faux wall of greenery and the title above. But we also wanted to, as you walk into the gallery, have people read some of the many quotes we came across in our research that really kind of set the tone for the exhibition and sort of set I think, people thinking about all the voices that went into this project. And just to mention that it was not only the four of us curators coming to this project from very different expertise and backgrounds, but also our colleagues in interpretation, et cetera. But also, many of you might not realize we work with a wonderful group of teens, so local high school students who also wrote some of the labels and were really important voices in terms of making decisions about our soundscape, for example, that I think Betsy will mention in a minute. So the other thing, again, I want to mention in a number of cases throughout the galleries, you'll also, when you do visit the show, if you haven't already, there are QR codes where you can listen to the voices of some of the artists and some of our other colleagues throughout the museum talking about the works when you're in the gallery itself. So I'll turn it over to my colleague Betsy Williams now, and she'll start us off in the galleries. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. And I'll continue us as you walk down the stairs into our special exhibition space. You'd pass through this entry point and then turn the corner and be facing, sorry, I'm getting my controls, this incredible tapestry and entry space into the museum. So this is our entry gallery, and this is where we wanted to introduce visitors to the exhibition itself and to its arguments, to really ask this question that carries through all the subsequent spaces. And this is to prompt visitors to think of a garden and to ask them, what do you imagine? Everyone has their own vision of a garden. We, among our curatorial team, found that each person had their own ideal of what a garden might be. And we found our own thoughts and concepts being challenged as we worked on this exhibition. So we're hoping that as people move through the exhibition, they too find themselves in this dialogue with us, with the artwork, and with their own preconceptions or expectations of what a garden should be. So we really ask people to stay for a while with this enormous 16th century Flemish tapestry with a park scene. It's made of wool and silk. And this tapestry, in some ways, serves to really enter people into the space, to imagine themselves in the space. It's bringing all the features of a formal European garden indoors, our intricate architectural settings, all of these carefully maintained hedges. And it is teeming with creative activities, and I'll show some details in a moment. There are people at play, there are people enjoying music, there are people tending garden beds, and it's all set in this very idylized space of this garden. So it has very regimented forms. That single point perspective is really important here. And it's really presenting an ideal of a European garden here. As far as we can tell, this was last on view in 1974. And like many of the works we'll be showing through the presentation today and in the exhibition itself, has not been on view in decades. Some of the works on view have never been displayed ever at all. And so really this is a great way to get people into the spirit of our exhibition. It's a sort of table of contents that we'll see carrying through about gardens as an art form, gardens traditions, gardens and gardeners and artist gardens, bringing that garden imagery indoors, and gardens in power. All of those themes will carry through the exhibition. And as Karen mentioned, there is a soundscape here so that as people are sitting on the benches and looking at that tapestry, they're really slowing down, stopping, engaging in close looking. And the teens really came up with the soundscape themselves and they designed it. So we're really grateful for them. For their input here in helping us get visitors to look at the tiny details and then to come back out at the larger picture. So Just to say, tapestries like these were called verdures. They're greenery being brought indoors. And although this is a visualization of how tapestries would look in interior spaces where you would have many of them in a row, really bringing that outdoor view indoors. And so just to give you a visualization that these often would come in sets, they were never just one, and helping you to imagine, what is the effect, the overall visual effect of this total immersive experience of the tapestry? What is it trying to do for visitors? So when we zoom in closely, we see all of these incredible details in this tapestry. And for us curators, it was a lot of fun to look closely. I think we spent hours looking at this tapestry and finding all of these details that were resonating with us. So we see on the left, people are laying food down for a table, or laying food on a table for a meal. And on the right, for example, we're seeing people performing music. They are conversing with each other. This is a very noisy tapestry, we've decided. We've been talking about it among ourselves. There's just so much activity. It's really a buzz with activity. We also see a flip side, and this is a theme that also will carry through the show, which is the work of gardening, really the labor behind gardening, that is both visible and invisible. And so here we're seeing, for example, people carrying water on the left in that arcade you can see in that LA, or people pruning, picking fruit from the trees in the left. On the right, you see an individual who seems to be carrying or participating in this garden activity. So it's really a great example to get people in the mindset of what a garden could mean in a European, early modern European context. Carefully manicured hedges, these really neat rows, and this landscape beyond that is scrunched into this tiny, tiny corner at the very top of the scene. And so the idea that the garden is a microcosm of the world beyond. And in this vision of the garden, the world beyond is not really that important. It is the world of the garden that is really so important in this European, early modern European vision of a garden. So as people are standing in that space, taking in this beautiful tapestry, really listening to the soundscape, they will turn, and as you turn into the next room, you encounter a completely different vision of a garden. And this shock, this kind of visual shock, and this experience of turning and seeing something so different was really top of mind for us as we were working with the designer to bring out this really important piece that carries through the show of cross-cultural and trans-historical comparatives. So the idea that we're looking at a single theme and sort of tracing out how different it is across time and space in how people respond to the world around them and the natural world. So this gallery was really an opportunity to begin to unpack this important argument that carries through the show, which is that gardens are not only represented in art, gardens are an art form themselves. And this is an idea that seems a little strange, perhaps to us today, but if you were to turn to these early modern European treatises, we see that in the Enlightenment period, they're really digging deep into the aesthetics of gardens, and they're putting them on par with art forms like music and painting and sculpture and poetry, with all of the rules of what makes a good garden and what makes good poetry or what makes good art. So this was something that my colleague Anatol Chikin, who is a Renaissance art historian, a garden art historian at Dumbarton Oaks, really encouraged us to think through. So I'm really grateful to him and his feedback on this because this became the through line that we thought about through the show. And in doing a garden exhibition in an art museum, that was just a really important focal point for us to really think through. So this juxtaposition of that European tapestry, 16th, early 17th century, with what you're seeing on the screen here, this is an 18th century series of scrolls from China, 20 feet long. They're huge. And so just in terms of the size, they go toe to toe with that European tapestry. And this is scrolls that have been painted by named artists. His name was Yuan Yao. And it is called An Elegant Gathering in a Secluded Garden, and it dates to the mid 18th century. So let's zoom in there And you will see here a series, this really series of scrolls. It's depicting a quite different vision of a garden. And that comparison back and forth, it's been fun watching visitors come and look at one and sit and then move and look at the other because it really prompts this consideration. So, reading the scroll from the right-hand side to the left, following how Chinese script was written in this time, we're seeing an array of creative activities in this garden. And so we see at center, it's a little bit hard to see on this slide, there are people playing music here. When we look in the bottom left, there are people engaging in discussion and they're performing calligraphy. And so here we're seeing how this garden is this place of art making and of art itself. And so this is just really something that we are teasing out in this gallery. I'm thinking about how relationship of microcosm and the world beyond is really different here. So here, the mountains beyond are much more prominent. The world that is beyond the garden is given so much more visual prominence. And it's suggesting a very different cultural notion of the relationship of garden and wider world than what we just saw in the European garden in the tapestry. And so this is just something that, as you come to visit the exhibition or as you dig deeper into the catalog, I think you'll see all of this kind of juxtaposition that goes across culture, revealing the specificity and the diversity of cultures and their attitudes towards gardens and art making beyond them. And then the third piece of this puzzle or this triangle of our argument is to look across time. And what was so fascinating to me as a person who works on really old, ancient and medieval things was to see how gardeners, how artists today, many are themselves gardeners, and how they are thinking in very sophisticated ways about how their gardening practice is an artistic practice. And so here you're seeing a presentation of Providence-based artist Andrew Raftery's The Autobiography of a Garden. It's dated from 2009 to 2016. And as Karen alluded to, he was involved in the installation of this. So a living artist who's coming in and talking with us about how he sees his garden and how that means in his work. So here he is memorializing the experience of creating a garden in Providence, Rhode Island, over the course of 7 years. So he first would record his gardening practice by drawing and then painting and then engraving into these copper plates, one for each month of the year. And that was then transferred onto these earthenware ceramic plates that have these sharp edges that are meant to evoke tools. So he places those, each representing 1 month of the year, against wallpaper that he himself designs, and each represents a different season of the year. So moving from left to right, you're seeing winter, spring, summer, and fall, and each of the months that maps onto that with details of him working in his garden. And so in Raftery's practice, the garden is a form of art, but it's then transformed into its own artistic expression. And it really drives home how gardens are places for making art and are also visualized or represented in artistic forms. So then we move to the next gallery, and one thing that we thought a lot about was how to talk about a big topic in a way that was not a garden history, not this happened first and then this happened next, but really was a way of opening up this question of gardens through time and history. And so in this gallery, we had a really tough task of thinking about how gardens are ancient garden ideals are reverberating through time and place. And particularly, this comes through in ideas about paradise or concepts that are emerging in an ancient world that are then carrying forward to today. So on the one hand, we have actual pieces of ancient gardens, and this is just some of the great depth of the MFA's collection. This is a Roman fresco from the Villa Contrada Botaro in Pompeii. And this is a water fountain also from a Roman garden with a reconstruction of the kind of setting that these objects were once part of in the peristyle of ancient villas. And so this is really to help show how these ancient gardens are then continuing to inspire Renaissance gardens. And we have a Sargent watercolor you'll see in a moment that is referring to Renaissance gardens, referring to ancient gardens. And that's really an important piece. So in this gallery view, you're seeing this juxtaposition across time. So the idea of paradise as a garden, which emerges in many origin stories in monotheistic religions around the world. We're seeing this idea of the Garden of Eden that emerges as this place, ideal place of human creation and human origin stories. So this ideal about paradisical gardens that are pervasive through these different traditions, they're places that are removed from the world around it where humankind can flourish and grow. And this word paradise is deriving from an ancient Persian world for a hunting garden. And so this is a theme that we also see, this hunting garden theme that carries through from ancient Persia through contemporary practice. And so at right, you're seeing one of our great 17th century Mughal carpets from India. This is depicting a hunting garden that is again continuing to resonate. The word in Persian is paradisos, and so that is the origin of the Greek word for paradise and then our English word today. And on the left, you're seeing several pieces that relate to Garden of Eden themes. So, a necklace by Joyce J. Scott that depicts Adam and Eve, an Ethiopian Israeli pillow sham, that artist who's embroidering a pillow sham depicting Adam and Eve. And then this amazing early American painting that is depicting Eden in a very imaginative way. So it's just again to play with these ideas of gardens of Eden and gardens of paradise and the word paradise itself rooted in these ancient ideals. From these ideas of art and paradise or the nature of gardens as art, those are big thematic topics, and those we are really abstracted from the human beings that are responsible for the care of gardens and their labor. And so here we move in this section to the idea of gardeners. And this is a movement away from the big idea, concept-driven galleries to then really dig into the people who care for and who make gardens. So the key work in this gallery is that tapestry that you saw flat on the table a few moments ago in Karen's slide. It is depicting Vertumnus throwing off his disguise. It's dated to the first half of the 17th century. And it was woven in a workshop associated with Jakob Goebbels. And it was we've had new research in recent weeks that have really revealed that it was perhaps under the supervision of a woman owner of this workshop, and her name was Katarina van Ende, in collaboration with Jan Reis, who's on the caption here. So carrying forward that Roman theme from the previous gallery, here we see a scene from Ovid's Metamorphoses, the epic poem, The Transformations. And in the story, Pomona, who is the goddess of gardens and orchards, she's sitting on the right there in blue, she meets Vertumnus, the god of seasons, in a garden that is filled with fountains and these very verdant pathways, so quite reminiscent to that tapestry that kicked us off. To enter this garden and to win Pomona's heart, Vertumnus disguises himself as a female gardener. And in the final scene of the poem that we're seeing here, he has pulled off his costume and he reveals his true self. And so you have to imagine this would have been the last of a series of tapestries that would have depicted this Roman poem into the early modern period. And I think what is a really important theme that we're seeing begin to develop here is how gardens are paradoxically enclosed. They're walled off, but in that walling off and in that enclosure, they become these places of freedom and self-expression. And we certainly see that in medieval material. And this is a theme that will continue through the artist gardens you'll see in a few moments. So just thinking about how we were really happy to have this tapestry come out on view. I don't know when it was last on view. I've been trying to track down, but haven't been able to find a date, at least in maybe 2000, maybe the late 90s, although that I'm not even certain. It is in a pristine condition. When we unrolled it, we gasped. It was so beautiful. The colors, the blues, the golds, the reds, When we installed it in this gallery, we were just so pleased to see it up on the wall. And even more pleased when we installed this Tom Lozer bench in front of it with those garden shovels, because the colors just match so perfectly. And we always been joking that was the last object that we installed in this installation, and really pulled the room together. We were so pleased to see it, just a perfect match. What's really interesting and exciting about this gallery is that it features works from every continent, and that was something that we didn't realize until we installed. One of the pieces that we love so much in this gallery is this artwork called Plantação by the Brazilian artist Maria Auxiliadora da Silva, dated to the 1970s, 1971. So this is a painting that depicts the artist's childhood memories growing up in Brazil. And here she witnessed her mixed race family's really joyous work of cultivating their own land. And so this is what you're seeing here. It's very tapestry-like or very textile-like, but it's actually a painting. And some of the materials here are, in fact, the artist's own hair. So that incorporation of herself into this image. And what I think this is a great moment to gesture to and to encourage you to enjoy our audio tour. Karen referred to that in the beginning. You can scan the QR code here. You don't need to be in the galleries to listen to that, so you can take it with you when you're out on a walk, as your podcast of the week. And this one has a really delightful conversation with Leila Bermeo, who is the Kristen and Roger Severson Curator of Painting in the Art of the Americas. And I think, as you can see, just looking at this list of curators who participated, we really drew from every department in the collections, and the conversation is so fun to listen to, all the way through. And last but not least, this gallery gives us an opportunity to really draw from our incredible collection of books and prints. And so those are a leitmotif that carries through the show with a great rhythm throughout the exhibition. And so we have amazing materials that don't often get on view because they are light sensitive. They have to sleep after they're out on rotation. So this is a very rare opportunity. Photographs, works on paper, tapestries or textiles. These are all things that need to sleep. And so this is just part of the preservation of the work. So having them out on view together is a spectacular opportunity to see works that don't normally get out on view. And this is a really playful corner of the exhibition, because we have here books and photos that speak to the work of gardening. And so on the left, for example, you're seeing an Italian Renaissance treatise on tools. And so that's part of this gardening as the art form. They're really detailing what you need to have your perfect garden, drawing from Roman antiquity, actually, here, thinking it through. You have in the center a notebook by the artist, local Cambridge-based artist, Michael Mazer, and he is noting the tulips that he's planting outside of his studio window. And so he even records the colors of the flowers and their shades of reds and yellows and purples. It's really beautiful. And this playful back and forth we're seeing, ancient Rome, Renaissance Italy, into Cambridge in the 20th century is really a hallmark of this exhibition. And it is really a reflection of these very thoughtful and really enjoyable conversations that we curators enjoyed over the course of planning this exhibition. And it's a nice segue for me to pass the baton to Courtney.
Thanks so much, Betsy. I'll take the next slide. Great. So this next space comes at the halfway point of the exhibition. We've given you a lot of things to think about in those first few galleries, and this is a moment to take a bit of a pause and enjoy the peace that comes with visiting a garden space. Our photos won't quite do it justice. You'll need to come in and visit the exhibition to see this, but this is a video feature of our Japanese garden, Tenshin-en, which is outside of the museum's walls, and it actually opened today for its seasonal opening. Today was the first day, and I saw lots of visitors enjoying it. But the video installation that we've included here has short video clips of the garden through the season, so it changes up every 2 minutes, and it allows visitors that moment of respite, and really challenges their ideas of what a garden can be, and gestures to the fact that the museum has had gardens at the heart of its displays for many years. I'll take the next slide. And then we turn the corner and we move into the next gallery, which is about artists and their gardens and what it means to be an artist who has a garden and how gardens can be a place of continued inspiration. It's something that's changing, it's seasonal, it's something that you tend, that grows. And the works here really speak to the way in which artists have strong relationships to their gardens. And I'm excited here, if you see on the wall, our beloved Monet painting of water lilies. It is alongside a painting by Gustav Caillebotte, another Impressionist painter. They usually hang upstairs, but 2 rooms apart. Monet is lucky to have his own gallery, but it means he doesn't get to play with his friends often. But in special exhibitions, we can bring paintings together that don't often hang side by side. And Monet and Caillebotte were friends. They both moved to new homes along the Seine River outside Paris in the 1880s, and they wrote each other notes about gardening, about where they could find the best plants, the best cuttings, where to go to visit a nursery. And I love 2 very different views of their gardens. Monet's Giverny, it's all about the water garden, and then Caillebotte is depicting his greenhouse where he grows plants there. And then next slide. You turn to the far end of the gallery. Here we have another incredible work that is out for now and will have to sleep after this. This is a set of 4 embroideries on silk, in silk by May Morris. May Morris was an artist and embroiderer. She's the daughter of William Morris of Morris and Company, the leading arts and crafts artist and designer. And here she has embroidered over a damask, the material in an oak pattern designed by her father. But she's embroidered these growing leaves and trees with pomegranates and fruits. And these are curtains or portiere that would have covered a window well. And at the top, they're inscribed with poems that speak either to the coming of summer or the silkworm in the garden at her family's home in Oxfordshire. And we love that direct relationship between the artist and her own garden. And yes, on to the next slide. Thanks, Betsy. The next space is thinking about why people reproduce gardens away from the natural world. What does it mean to take the garden with you? We hinted at that idea with the tapestry in the first gallery, where you're thinking about covering your stone walls with greenery to make you feel as if you're outside. But here, the star in this gallery is this incredible set of wallpaper. This is 7 pieces of wallpaper that were made in 1855 for the World's Fair or Exposition Universelle in Paris. They were the cutting edge, both in terms of what wallpaper could do as an artistic endeavor, but also technologically. To achieve this printing, they used 3,000 wood blocks to make this design and many, many colors. And the subject matter is perfect for this exhibition. The subject is called the Jardin d'Armide, or the Garden of Armida. And Armida was a sorceress or kind of enchantress from a Renaissance poem called Jerusalem Delivered by Torquato Tasso. And in that story, the hero, whose name was Rinaldo, is lured into Armida's garden by the scents and smells of her flowers, and he becomes enchanted there and stays. And for me, I love looking at the bright, rich colors of the flowers in the foreground, and then it disappears into this misty, almost unknowable background behind, which I think hints at Armida's luring power. And then next slide. Also in this gallery, we are featuring 2 dresses here in the center of the space. We would have had many works, many textile or fashion pieces with floral designs to choose from, but we really challenged ourselves to stick with designers for whom gardens were important. And so we have on the left, the long dress with the roses is designed by Christian Dior in 1956. And we know he spent a lot of time in his mother's rose garden growing up in Normandy and had gardens of his own in the south of France. And then the shorter dress that you see there is designed by Yves Saint Laurent when he takes over at the House of Dior in his very first season there when he's in his early 20s. And he had gardens at his home in Marrakesh and really kept coming back to that as a source of inspiration. And that's from 1958. And we've been talking so much about how 2 years separate these dresses, but the feel of them is so completely different. The long dress has that princess feeling, very glamorous, but then the shorter dress with its little bolero jacket is really kind of stretching its way almost into the 1960s, which it's been such a joy to have these side by side in the galleries. Will you move to the next slide? The next gallery here is all about gardens and power, and gardens as places where people express their power. We thought here about how you can stage yourself in a garden space, you can make music there, you can perform your powerful acts, and also how gardens just reflect colonial power and the role of empire in creating gardens. And we'll talk a little bit more in depth about that. If you move to the next slide, Betsy. The centerpiece of this gallery is this enormous hunting carpet, which was made around 1530 for the Shah in Persia. And it is such an important work to Islamic art historians that it's simply known as the Boston hunting carpet. And here the garden is around the border and they're looking in on a hunt. So that theme that Betsy mentioned earlier in the third gallery, and the royals and the wealthy people are sitting around the edge drinking things, eating, talking, enjoying their watching the garden and the hunting unfold at the center. And then here's another one of those behind the scenes photos. This is when we unrolled it in the textile study room, and you can see colleagues gathered around it, really so in awe of getting to see it maybe for the first time. And then if you move to the next slide, you'll see, as both Betsy and Karen have mentioned, we have really tried to pair works from different time periods to create this cross-historical dialogue. And these works presented themselves on a platter to us. They're a perfect case study for that. The color works that you see were made in the 18th century. They're prints by Robert Thornton, who made them as part of a costly and not very commercially successful project called the Temple of Flora. He was really trying to rival European botanical books in his home country of England and make a new version there. And then the black and white works alongside it at the center, you can see, are a response by contemporary artist Jim Dine from the 1980s. And he had been prompted by his wife Nancy, who was a keen gardener, to reinterpret Thornton's Temple of Flora. And the bound volumes at the bottom, you can see one for Thornton and one for Dine. The Dine ones include poems about gardens. So really leaning again into that idea of gardens as an art form akin to poetry or music or something like that. And then next slide, we'll jump across in the same gallery. This is just on the opposite side. And I thought I'd just do a little bit of a study of these plates and really look at that idea about gardens and how they can be a reflection of power. And we'll look at this installation of 8 plates, 2 ice cream coolers, and a basket from a dessert service. I'll take the next slide. So to tell the story of this porcelain service, we have to start with Josephine Bonaparte, who was the wife of Napoleon Bonaparte until their divorce in 1809. She was born in the French Caribbean and moved to France when she was young to marry, and then she eventually met Napoleon and became his wife. And here she's shown in this portrait. She has a book, an herbarium with botanical samples depicted in it, and she also has a floral bouquet on the table in front of her. And next slide. Josephine really, really loved plants and was very interested in gardens from her childhood all the way through her adulthood. And in 1799, she purchased a property outside of Paris called the Chateau de Malmaison, which you see here, a view both from the courtyard side and then a view from the garden side. And it was about 100 acres when she moved there. And by the time of her death, she had expanded it to be 300 acres. Next slide, please. These are some views of the garden. It's very much not a regimented, perfectly manicured garden. It's more about a place where you could meander, you could uncover things, you could discover new plants. And Josephine sought plants from all over the world to fill this garden. She had a very varied collection of exotic flowers, particularly from temperate and subtropical regions. And there were more than 200 plants that were new to France that had never been in France before. And she had things come to her from Napoleon's Egypt campaign, his Austrian campaign, from Morocco, Mexico, South Africa. And I think in the ultimate example of how important her garden was, her endeavor was undeterred by Napoleon's continental blockade. She still got shipments from England, and her gardener was given a special passport to get him through. Next slide. Thank you. She created a large greenhouse to house the botanical samples that needed warmer environments. And at the time, it was thought to be one of the largest areas of glass ever created. Next slide. And this garden endeavor that she created really led to some incredible production of artwork, primarily by the artist Pierre-Joseph Redoute, who was a painter. He was Belgian. He's known as the Raphael of flowers. He made over 2,000 different depictions of flowers while working for Josephine as her dedicated court artist. And he published books about her garden. I'm showing you two of those here. You can go to the next slide, Betsy. This is a really beautiful example of a double page spread of an amaryllis that he named for her. You can see the name of it there. Next slide. And then this led probably to his most popular book, The Roses, which was begun in 1817, which was actually after Josephine's death. But these were multi-volume books with botanical descriptions and then stipple engraving based off of Redoute's watercolors. Go to the next slide. And this takes us back to the dessert service, which is based off of Redoute's watercolors. And these are one-off pieces. There's not multiples of these ceramics that were made. The entire service of 108 pieces was conceived of by Alexandre Brongniart, who was the director of the Sèvres porcelain manufactory, and he created this set directly to appeal to Josephine. She didn't commission it, but he was right that she would like it. It was a very costly, but it was a calculated risk that he took. And each piece is hand painted with different grasses and lilies that were cultivated by Josephine and then depicted by Redoute in his watercolors. If you go to the next slide. You could just see a sense. These are the ones that are in our collection, and it gives you a real sense of the variety of the botanical samples. Next slide. And then these are the ice cream coolers. What dessert service doesn't have ice cream coolers? These are for holding ice cream or custard, some other cold beverage and dessert, and then you would put ice and salt around the top, that little reserve to keep it cold. Next slide. I love to just finish with this one on Josephine. This was really her endeavor. She created this garden and it spawned all of this artistic production off the back end of it. And this watercolor, she is there in the bust. It says Empress Josephine underneath it. And then we have the goddess Flora who's decorating it with a garland of flowers. And in the background, we see her greenhouse. And it really just speaks to how integral this was to her personal identity. And now I'll hand it back to Karen to take you through the last gallery of the exhibition.
Thanks, Courtney. The focus of the final gallery is on the gardens and the future. And at first, I have to say, I question the inclusion of this 19th century work in this context, but Betsy was totally right in pushing for it. It really is perfect. William Morris, now this is the father of that, the beautiful embroidered pieces we saw a minute ago, the window treatments. William Morris was a social reformer, a writer, and a textile designer during the arts and crafts movement. When faced with all of the negative effects he saw of the Industrial Revolution on the British public, he responded by producing designs like this incredible greenery tapestry, which will be familiar to some of you. It's really a spectacular object and again, a very immersive, gives you a very immersive feeling as you move into this final gallery. he was very interested in emphasizing the handcrafted over the mass-produced at this moment when, as I say, the Industrial Revolution was taking over. Cities were growing and people were struggling in the new urban settings with the air pollution and industrialization that was changing really people's lives overnight. So keep this image in your minds of this verdant, forested space with the beautiful flowers in the foreground, but also the animals now in an environment very much replete with animals, but empty of people. Next slide. What was really exciting to me as a photo curator was the way that in many instances, it seemed the exhibition where photography proved to be the ideal medium to highlight the themes we were centering on. In this last gallery on the future of gardens, the environment and issues of climate change, photography really became the vehicle to bring that conversation forward to the present day. And contemporary works like these that I'll talk about in a sec really speak in very powerful ways, I think, to the impact of human activity on the land and how it can be documented and amplified with works like these. Next slide, please. So if you imagine on one side of the room, the William Morris tapestry, and on the other, this fabulous and very strange photograph by Gregory Crutzen. Some of you may recognize his name, a contemporary photographer who at the time he made this image was just out of art school at Yale, was fascinated by things like the dioramas in natural history museums and the creepy, wonderful imagery of David Lynch films. Is building these kinds of miniature models on tabletops in his parents' summer house. I just find this image fabulous. In the background, a photograph of a sort of cookie cutter suburban landscape, and in the foreground, these, sort of what we, can imagine is nature sort of taking over in the absence of people. There's no one to be seen anywhere, and these strange moths and insects are crawling out of these mysterious jars in the earth. Next slide. The other work that I really wanted to make sure to include, and some of this may be work that's familiar to some of you who remember our Graciela Iturbide show that happened a few years ago. Iturbide was invited to document the botanical gardens in Oaxaca, Mexico, so in central Mexico, in the late 1990s, and over a period of years revisited these venerable but very vulnerable landscapes that were struggling with the air pollution, et cetera, in the gradually becoming more industrialized area. And she became fascinated and eager to document the attempts of the local people to become sort of caretakers of these plants. And you see on the left the boards and cardboard and rope sort of what am I trying to say? These splints that are holding these cacti in place. And on the right, a tree that even has these IV bags hanging in it. So speaking in these very beautiful and very mysterious sort of otherworldly black and white photographs to the strength and resilience of these plants, but also of the people and the caretakers who are trying to help them survive. Next slide. I also want to point out, this is one of my favorite works in the exhibition. It's a work by Mary Mattingly, and one of the very recent acquisitions to be added to the collection in really just the months before the exhibition opened. Mary Mattingly is a climate activist herself, so not simply a photographer, but an installation artist and someone who is very outspoken in her concerns about climate change and the environment. And she is creating these really almost Dr. Seuss-like landscapes and garden settings that if you look at them at first, you think, what a beautiful flower garden. And the longer you look, you realize what you're seeing is something created from plastic flowers, from real plants, from AI generated, digitally generated images of flowers. Some of them completely made up and unreal. The moon in the sky becomes this eerie sort of addition to the image. And she is really, I think, calling into question or reminding us really how we need to be looking very long and hard at the landscape that we are the caretakers of. And maybe as gardens, it is important to remember that we maybe are um, if we consider that gardens are microcosms of the larger natural world, we can consider the earth itself as a kind of planetary garden, and that we are much more likely maybe to describe ourselves as guardians rather than as gardeners of the land. And that once we shift our mindset to consider that role as maybe caretakers or concerned caregivers to that environment, that we will consider that our yards and gardens are as important to care for as this larger planetary garden that of the earth. So I think this message in the final gallery has really resonated with our visitors. And I want to just end by pointing the next slide, mentioning that the other thing that really inspired the decision to do this show was the fact that we at the MFA are celebrating the 50th anniversary of Art in Bloom, and that celebration will begin on Friday, May 1st, and run through that first weekend in May. Hopefully, you all are aware that this is happening and that you will come and join us. I want to mention to those of you who get and see the New York Times that there will be a wonderful write-up on Sunday, April 14th, and on the Art in Bloom that I hope you'll take a look at. And next slide. Also, just to mention that we had a wonderful review in the Boston Globe, March 31st, that hopefully some of you saw. And to remind people that as members, you have the wonderful opportunity to see this exhibition during special members only hours, and they are listed here on Fridays 6 to 7 and Sunday mornings 10 to 11. Thank you.
Thank you all so much for giving us such a fabulous sort of walk through the exhibition and some fun kind of sneak peeks behind the scenes about how it all came together. The weather today also sort of matched matched the exhibition, which was also a welcome change from Boston's winter. We do have a little bit of time for questions, and we have a couple that have come in during the presentation. And a reminder to folks at home, if you'd like to ask a question tonight, just use the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen, and we'll answer as many as we can. But we do have a couple already. So first up is really a question about the hunting carpet in particular, and specifically, how is it displayed? It's large. It looks heavy. How do you mount something like that safely?
So, the hunting carpet is a silk carpet. It's completely made of silk. So silk
Ah,
warp, silk weft, all the fibers are silk. And what that means is that it's very shimmery. It's very beautiful when you move around it. But it also means that it's very fragile. And so with our conservation team and with design and with interpretation, we spent a lot of time talking about different solutions to protect the carpet to make sure people could enjoy looking at it, but that it was safe for the object. And we decided to display it on a sort of like a wedge, that it is
Mhm.
supported underneath, but it doesn't get as much dust on it, can't vacuum it. I mean, that's the real challenge of this. It's not like your carpet at home that you can kind of run the vacuum over.
right.
You have to be very careful with it. And so that was a major factor in the consideration of this, of the mounting and of the display, to make it visible as much as possible, but also to keep it safe. And in the gallery, it just holds the wall in such a beautiful way. And I'm looking at Karen and Courtney, we went back and forth. Should it be flat in the middle? Should it be behind glass? How would we handle that? So yeah.
Excellent. And looking at it, I didn't realize it was silk. I need to go down and look at it again a
Yeah,
little
yeah.
more closely.
Move around it. It has a
Yeah,
very
you're
different
right.
visual effect. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Um, Lots of accolades, terrific talk. So lots of thank yous coming in as well. So I'm looking for some questions here. Um, were all of the pieces in the exhibition from the museum's own collection, or did you borrow from other institutions? Um, I believe the. Go ahead, Karen. I was going to say, who's going to take that one?
I'm happy to take that one.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, there are only three loans in the exhibition. This is, again, another unusual aspect of this show was that we set this challenge to ourselves, and we were so excited to learn that we really could represent this idea and the themes that we wanted to get across through our own collections. So that was a real point of pride. There were a very few things that we wanted to borrow from very local collections, things
Mhm.
that we knew about. So, two photographs and one textile piece from friends of the museum, people who are involved with the museum. So, again, I think very exciting for them, very exciting for us. Two of the loans were photographs, and that's why I raised my hand, just because.
Mhm.
Um, you know, I gave a talk today, course today, and honestly, I think I must have shown, I don't even know how many photographs, but in a perfect world, it would have been all photographs. So I had to hold back on many occasions. I would have included many more photographs had I been able to, but this was real luxury to borrow two from the community.
That's terrific. And a treat to be able to really showcase so much of our own holdings, which is special. Um, so another question about tapestries. So wonderful to see the tapestries. Are there more in the collection that might be displayed in the future?
Um,
We
the
do we know even, right?
the tapestries are a great strength of the MFA's collection, and we have been part of this exhibition was to get to show people the depth and the beauty of what we have um, across time. And tapestry is this medium that I work on very ancient, late antique objects that date to the second and third century, and they're woven in tapestry, all the way to contemporary makers who are working in tapestry from the Americas, ancient Americas to the Mediterranean. It's just such a great topic. So I guess stay tuned would be the point for tapestries, and especially those big tapestries, European tapestries. We have amazing
Yeah.
collection. Yeah,
Betsy, how often can they be displayed? Is that part of, I imagine, are they similar to works on paper where they can only,
very,
yeah.
very similar. And I mean, it's a nice segue to Courtney's wallpaper because I
Hmm.
think Courtney, that wallpaper had never, I mean, I see one of the questions is, was it installed in a home or considered artwork?
Yeah.
And I think that's like a great,
Yes.
example of the preservation piece.
Yes. I saw that question too, and I was looking forward to answering it. Yes,
Good.
that wallpaper, some of them, there were multiple sets made, probably not very many. Some of them may have been used in people's homes, but the set that we have never was. We know that because it has its original tacking margins on it, so it was never cut down to create that overlay to create a seamless view. So if you go and visit the exhibition, you'll see strips of gray wood acting as a barrier between the scenes. That's actually covering up those borders, which are now what we used to adhere the wallpaper to the wall using magnets. And a magnetic
Interesting.
wall that they hold onto. So it's about 200 magnets. But no, these ones were never used. That's why the colors are so fresh and it's in such incredible condition. We're so lucky to have it. And it's never been shown at the MFA either. It was an acquisition in 2020.
Oh, that recently. That's
Yes.
terrific.
Yep,
Well, Courtney, while we have you,
sure.
another question that I think you can answer is about Josephine's garden, actually. And is it a place that you can visit? I think
Yeah.
you've. It's
Yes.
very enticing. And those,
Yes, yes, yep. It is open. It's called the Musée National des Châteaux de Malmaison et de Bois, and it's about 10 miles outside of Paris. Easy to get there on the bus, and they have a small museum as well that is about Josephine and the Bonapartes.
oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
And perhaps we'll end on this one last question, which is more, I think, Betsy, it's going to be for you. It's more about a fashion question around Oscar de la Renta. Did we consider or do we have garden de la
So
Renta?
I want to I want to thank the person who posed this question, and I'm looking at Karen and Courtney because it's like, wow, now we can do a part two. And just to say that, we really, as Courtney alluded to, we really spent time thinking about the selection of fashion piece, those two pieces in the exhibition, and the pairing became so important the more we did research into the collection. That green dress had not been photographed. It was had a button that was loose at the top, so there was
Mm.
conservation work that went into it. But Karen and we were all there, and when they pulled open, we saw the dress, and we just went, "You are in the show." We knew. So thank you. That'll be part two.
Were there other things like that that immediately you were like, we have to show that? Maybe the hunting carpet was one, or like those kinds of things that are immediate, like, oh,
And yeah, and I just want to say that, I mean, I know I speak for all of us. We had these amazing experiences where, over and over again, we look at great things in our own fields, in our own collections, all the time. But to be able to stand and, I managed to take some pictures of us all kind of just standing there, kind of gobsmacked in front of these Chinese scrolls, or there's a beautiful Chinese scroll in the Power Gallery, the second class gallery. We were just so amazed by each other's things, and the idea that we all were able to kind of come together. And I joked the other night, a little bit of arm wrestling went into this, but what an eye-opening experience. All of us work with all the different conservation labs, all of our colleagues, all the preparators and conservators who know how to work with these objects. It was really a learning experience for all of us and really exciting.
yeah. Well, all of the hard work is so evident in the exhibition when you visit. And I know we've run a little over time, and we've answered all of our questions too. So I think we'll leave it there. But I want to encourage for members joining us virtually, if you have not seen Framing Nature yet, please plan your visit to the museum. Use your free exhibition tickets. Take advantage of the member hours that Karen so kindly highlighted in the talk, and come and check it out for yourself. If you have seen it already, think about who in your life might be a gardener and fascinated by this. Come back and see it now with all of the knowledge, the additional knowledge and that behind the scenes peak that you had, and experience it again. You have plenty of time. Framing Nature Gardens and Imagination is on view here at the MFA until June 28th, so still plenty of time to see it. And I hope that we will see many of you during Art and Bloom weekend as well. So thank you, thank you, thank you, Karen, Courtney, and Betsy, for the great talk. We all thoroughly enjoyed it, and I wish everybody a terrific night.